We launch our new theme for the month of April today, The Gifts of Imperfection, and this theme is based on the book by Brené Brown, the book by that name. And I'm reading from the very first chapter, page 3, Digging Deep. Brené Brown says, in early 2008, when my blog was still pretty new, I wrote a post about breaking my Dig Deep button. You know the Dig Deep button, right? It's the button that you rely on when you are too bone tired to get up one more time in the middle of the night to do one more load of throw up diarrhea laundry, or to catch one more plane, or to return one more call, or to please or perform the perfect way you normally do, even when you just want to flip someone off and hide under the covers. The Dig Deep button is a secret level of pushing through when we're too exhausted and overwhelmed, when there's too much to do and too little time for self-care. In my blog post, I explained how I had decided not to fix my Dig Deep button. I made a promise to myself that when I felt emotionally, physically, and spiritually done, I'd try slowing down rather than relying on my old standbys, pushing through, soldiering on, and sucking it up. It worked for a while, but I missed my button. I missed having something to turn to when I was depleted and down. I needed a tool to help me dig my way out. So I turned back to my research to see if I could find a way to dig that was more consistent with wholehearted living. Maybe there was something better than just sucking it up. Here's what I found. Men and women who live wholeheartedly do indeed dig deep. They just do it in a different way. When they're exhausted and overwhelmed, they get deliberate in their thoughts and behaviors through prayer, meditation, or simply setting their intentions. They get inspired to make new and different choices, and they get going. They take action. Since I made that discovery, I've been digging deep the new way, and it's been pretty amazing. It's not the old dig deep, the pushing through. I don't force myself to start working or do something productive. Rather, I prayerfully, intentionally, and thoughtfully do something restorative. The Gifts of Imperfection. Today's affirmation, I'm going to read it through, and then I'll ask you to stand and join me. I am worthy of love. I release any sense of shame and lean into my innate goodness. I am as God created me, perfect, whole, and complete. I am worthy of love. Please stand and join me. With conviction, I am worthy of love. I release any sense of shame and lean into my innate goodness. I am as God created me, perfect, whole, and complete. I am worthy of love. And so it is. I was about 13 years old, and I was standing at my locker with my best friend and locker partner. Her name was Robin. And we were talking about our futures. And Robin was telling me everything that she wanted to do with her life. And then she said to me, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And honestly, I had never given it any thought. And I opened my mouth, and what fell out is, "I want to be a pastor." Now, at the time, my family and I were active in the Lutheran Church. I was in Luther League. Any Luther Leaguers out there? Our teen program, I was in confirmation. Any confirmation students out there? where I was going through the process of a 2-year process of learning to become a full member of the church, honoring my baptism and becoming a full member of the spiritual community. I loved our pastor. I loved his enthusiasm for life. I loved how much he loved us. I loved his joy. I loved it that he seemed to know more about God than anybody else. I loved everything about him. And I opened my mouth and I said, I want to be a pastor. And my best friend looked at me with something very close to horror on her face and said, Marla, girls can't be pastors. And I went, oh, that's right. And in that moment, I closed the book on my dream and my purpose for life. And I never thought of it again. Until I was out to lunch one day with a dear friend. We were on Granville Island in Vancouver, BC. We were having a weekend away. And we were sitting in this restaurant, and as usual, as I had been for many years, I was complaining about my job and my life and my dissatisfaction with how things were. And I think maybe he was a little tired of hearing about that, because he got this exasperated look on his face, and he said, come on, what do you want to do? And I opened my mouth and I said, I want to be a minister. I don't know where it came from. It fell out of my mouth. It was 15 years later. And I burst into tears. Sitting in a restaurant on Granville Island in Vancouver, British Columbia, and I'm sobbing. And my friend is like, check, please. So why am I telling you this story? Well, first off, next week I'm here 3 months as your senior minister. How fun is that? And I thought you should know a little bit about my call to ministry. How did I end up here? Because that was in like 1991 or 2. I'm not sure exactly, but it was right in there. And now it's 2018. What? A lot has happened in between there, because look, here I am. So I thought you should know a little bit about this journey, but it also fits in very well with our theme this month, the gifts of imperfection, and the idea of wholehearted living. Because, you know, opening up to this authentic purpose for my life required that I take on the task, if you will, of wholehearted living. And so let me define that term for you. Brené Brown defines wholehearted living on page 1. She says, wholehearted living is about engaging in our lives from a place of worthiness. It means cultivating the courage, compassion, and connection to wake up in the morning and think, no matter what gets done and how much is left undone, I am enough. It's going to bed at night thinking, yes, I am imperfect and vulnerable and sometimes afraid, but that doesn't change the truth that I am also brave and worthy of love and belonging. Wholehearted living is about engaging in our lives from a place of worthiness. Am I worthy? Are you worthy? Do you see, when I was 14-ish and had this conversation with my girlfriend, standing at our locker, what I engaged with was not wholehearted living, was it? What I engaged with was my sense of unworthiness. So deeply, I am a girl. A girl couldn't possibly be worthy of serving something greater than she is. Do you see how integral that is to who I was? And how quickly and how easily I owned that message. I was like, oh yeah, that's right. I can't be a minister. I'm a girl. I'm not worthy of stepping forward into my purpose in life. And the only reason I owned it so quickly and easily was I'd had good training the previous 14 years, right? You see, we are trained, not because anybody doesn't want the best for us, but because we don't know. And we're learning, and we are evolving, and we are growing. We are so often trained to embrace a sense of unworthiness rather than the spiritual truth of ourselves, which is we are as God created us, in the light, in the love, in the glory, perfect, whole, and complete. And no matter what is done or left undone, my life is God's life now. The infinite is moving in me, as me, through me. This is the spiritual truth. And as I align with this, whether it's a call to ministry or it's a call to be a dog walker, we begin to do it in a different way. We begin to own our lives more fully. We begin to recognize that it is our spiritual duty to duplicate and replicate the nature of God, to practice, to evolve, to grow. And we become wholehearted livers, which I love to say. What am I, a wholehearted liver? You see, to be wholehearted, according to the dictionary, to be wholehearted means to be completely sincere, completely committed. The dictionary definition uses words like emphatic, unreserved, unconditional, authentic. To be wholehearted is to live emphatically, unreservedly, unconditionally, to be sincere and genuine in our commitment to life. To be wholehearted is to allow the one power to express effortlessly and easily and fully in, as, and through us. So in our reading this morning, I shared with you the keys, some of the keys, one of the keys to wholehearted living, and this is the ability to dig deep, to get deliberate, to get inspired, and to get going, to dig deep in a healthy way. Not the kind of dig deep where we just like, oh God, if I don't do this, the world is going to end. Not that kind of dig deep. That's codependent and unhealthy and coming from a place of unworthiness, right? She's talking about a new kind of dig deep, to get deliberate in our self-care, to get inspired from that deliberateness, to get going and move through life in a new way. So sitting in that restaurant that day, in tears, I got deliberate in a new way. I knew I had to move forward, that my life was going to be miserable if I did not move forward. Now, at that time, interestingly enough, I actually was going to a Unity Church in Bellingham, Washington. And Reverend Gwen Norman was the minister, and I don't know if anybody ever knew her, but she was a powerhouse. She was this little tiny, 80-pound soaking wet thing who, energy out the windows. And I had been going to this church for a while, and I really loved her. And it's interesting to me that I had seen Judy Sherman at Seattle Unity. I had seen Reverend Gwen at Unity in Bellingham. And some part of me still had not connected with the idea that girls could be ministers. I was a little slow. And I sat at that table, and I thought of Reverend Gwen. And I thought, well, if she can do it, I can do it. Do you see how I began to get deliberate? I began to get intentional. I began to get conscious that maybe there is something different I could be doing in life than sitting around complaining to all my friends and family who are probably really tired of listening to me. I began to get deliberate. And then what came out of that was I got inspired, right? I started taking classes. I actually became a member of Unity of Bellingham. I started to actually kind of walk a little differently. Do you see? Out of that intentionality, shifting, out of that intentionality, I was like, is God texting me right this moment? I don't know. Out of that intentionality, I was able to get inspired to take a different kind of action in my life. I began to actually engage in a spiritual practice, which I'd been hearing about for years. And oh yeah, that's good. I should probably do that someday. I actually started to do it. And when times got tough, instead of complaining, I started to move into taking a deep breath, trusting the universe, being present, meditating, praying, asking my prayer partner for support. Now, I wish I could tell you that this all worked on day one. But it's a learning process, isn't it? And I had to learn to get deliberate because all of my training, all of my self-belief about my own unworthiness did not support my being deliberate and loving myself. Nothing supported that except an inner call to something greater. You see, your soul knows the truth of you. My soul knew the truth of me. I just had to get in line with it. I had to be willing to see that. Remember, I'd been looking at these women ministers for several years. I did not have the eyes to see the possibility for myself. And so I got deliberate, and out of my deliberateness, I began to get inspired to take right action. I began to dig deep. So it's all going pretty well, and I'm a member now at Unity of Bellingham. I'm learning, I'm growing, and what happens? What? My marriage ended. Backsliding, complain, whine. My life is no good. Life is hard. I'll never be okay. See, all of my unworthiness comes back up again to the surface. And then what happened? I began to dig deep. I began to get deliberate, setting new intentions about how I was going to walk this path, developing new clarity, taking more classes, praying more, getting another prayer partner, doing some therapy and counseling. I began to dig deep in a new way. And then everything kind of levels out, and I'm doing okay. And then this job I hated, I got laid off. And not only did I get laid off, I didn't have a partner anymore to depend on to help support me. I got laid off, and I didn't have any income. This stuff is BS. This is crazy. I've been doing everything they told me to do. I'm taking every class. I'm praying every day. I'm working the principles, and I have no money and no job, and I'm living in this dingy apartment, and forget it. I'm not going to be a minister. Have you ever been in a place like that? And I camped out there for a while. New thought backsliding, right? And then I began to get deliberate again. I began to get intentional. I began to re-engage with my spiritual practice. I began to re-engage in a new way with my spiritual center. And then I had to move in with my sister, which brought up a whole other thing. But back to the Seattle area where I actually found a ministerial program I could participate in. See, I was trying to figure out how could I move to Unity Village for 3 years to become a Unity minister. And that I'm moving in with my sister and returning to the Seattle area, Without having to do that, I never would have discovered a ministerial program in Seattle that was Centers for Spiritual Living that I could complete. So you begin to see how digging deep, wholehearted living, it's not a one-time event. It's a process, isn't it? And we might get stuck, and then we take the sacred breath. We get deliberate again. We set a new intention. We engage in a new spiritual practice. And then here I am doing all of my prerequisites, and years have gone by. This is now, I think it must be 1999 by now, and I'm just about to complete all of my prerequisites for ministerial school, which I've been working on for 3, 4 years, 5 years, something like that. The ministerial school closes. I had to dig deep. I had to dig deep. And I was inspired to take right action. And the short version of that right action, at the time, the Agape, Reverend Michael Beckwith Center, down in the Los Angeles area, was a headquarters for the School of Ministry. And they had a satellite campus in Oakland. And I thought, they have a satellite campus in Oakland. Why couldn't they have a satellite campus in Seattle? Now, mind you, I've never set foot. I mean, I'd visited the church, but I didn't know anybody there. I knew nothing. And I picked up the phone and I called Agape in Los Angeles and I said, I want to talk to whoever's in charge of the ministerial school. And they put me through to Reverend Sage Bennett. She answered the phone and I said, hello, my name is Marla Mason. I've just completed all of my ministerial school prerequisites and the school here is closing. And I wonder if Agape would be interested in opening a ministerial school here in Seattle. Really long silence. And she says, can you tell me a little more? And so, as I said, this is the short process, but this is such a great example because it's a microcosm of what we do. She and I talked on the phone for about a half an hour, and I gave her all the information, and she asked me lots of questions, and I talked to her about the 5 or 6 potential students I knew about who might be ready for the school in the fall. And as we completed, she said, you know, let me talk to Reverend Michael. I'm going on vacation next week. It's going to be a few weeks, but I'll talk to him and I'll get back to you. And we hung up. Instant, every moment of unworthiness I ever had in my whole life bubbled up from deep within. As I hung up that phone, I was like, oh my God, what have you done? You called Agape and asked. They are going to think you are out of your mind. You are the biggest idiot ever. Do you get this in your head? Does this happen? And I'm walking around my living room like this. Oh my God, what have I done? That was the stupidest thing. My reputation with them is ruined. I'm literally doing this. And you know, a voice in my head said, if you want to be a minister, you better start acting like one. And I stopped. And it's like I literally kind of did, you know. And I thought, what would a minister do? And I thought, well, a minister would probably pray. And I sat down in my chair, and I'm a pretty good prayer. And I started to pray about divine right outcome and perfect order and harmony and ease and grace. All of these things for my ministry and for the school in Seattle. And I finished my prayer and I get up and I'm washing dishes or something and I'm just like, okay, I can wait 3, 4 weeks, whatever, doesn't matter. And my phone rings and I picked up the phone and I said, hello. And Reverend Sage's voice says, is this Marla Mason? And I said, yes. And she says, Reverend Michael says we'll do it. And I'm like, what? And she says, yeah, you guarantee us 6 students will do it. You see, I dug deep. I did something restorative. I did something positive. I got intentional. I engaged in spiritual practice. I was inspired to take right action. And I got going and took that action. And indeed, that fall, Agape opened a satellite campus in Seattle. And I and 5 other students started that fall. Now, my journey of digging deep, my journey to wholehearted living, doesn't stop there. In fact, I ran across something this morning that I cannot wait to share with you. Because yes, I finished ministerial school, life's challenges came up. But being a minister isn't always what we think it might be. Yes? And there are so many opportunities that I have to dig deep, even still. I ran across this morning. It's kind of crazy how this just showed up. This is a letter that was sent to Myrtle Fillmore on December 17th, 1926. Okay? December 17, 1926, to Mrs. Myrtle Fillmore, 917 Tracy Street. Dear friend, Wednesday evening, your preliminary talk was very lengthy. 4 rows back, we could not hear all you said, and 2 men in front of us went to sleep. And one of them snored, while your husband behind you also went to sleep. We believe that you should add dignity to the meeting if you were to only do the silent word and break it with soft music and then let your husband give the message. Then your presence would add dignity and worth. As it is, your talks bring forth unpleasant comments from those attending the meetings. Signed, a friend. Now, I've never had exactly this, but I've certainly received feedback that had this sense and feeling about it, right? And what I'm trying to say to you is that I'm sure Myrtle Fillmore had to dig deep and get deliberate when she got that letter. I'm sure that she had to remember the spiritual truth that she is showing up to the glory of God to the best of her ability right here and right now and in all moments and in all times. She had to remember the gifts of imperfection. She had to remember that whatever may or may not have happened that evening was the perfect thing. And that she is showing up in service to something greater than she is. And I'm sure that that took some digging deep for her so that she could get inspired to take right action. And I have the same experience. Now, have you ever received feedback that perhaps triggered your unworthiness rather than your worthiness? What if you dug deep? What if you remembered the spiritual truth rather than allowing it to mean something about you? Take a deep breath. You see, this journey is not for the faint of heart. Letters like this don't feel like gifts. Tough times don't feel like gifts. The ministerial school closing did not feel like a gift. My divorce did not feel like a gift. And yet here I am. And this is the gift. All of these imperfections or seeming imperfections have brought me great rewards. Here I am with you today. And so I want to offer you 2 thoughts about how we might align these seeming gifts, these things that don't always feel like gifts, how we might come more fully into wholehearted living with whatever is going on. And the first is simply a question. I invite you to ask yourself right now, what kind of life might I create if I gave myself a break from the life I'm in? What kind of life might you create if you gave yourself a break from the life you're in? And by giving yourself a break, I mean, what kind of life might you create if you got a little more deliberate and a little less reactive? If when these tough times, the big ones and the small ones, come up for you, if you anchored in prayer, if you anchored in the breath, if you anchored in something different than reaction and fear and flight and unworthiness, if you anchored in your worthiness in these tough times, what kind of life might you create? I am as God created me, in the light, in the love, in the glory. Anchor in that. And then the second thing, I don't know. I'm thinking about doing this. I haven't done this, all right? I'm thinking I'm going to create a quit list and then execute on the quit list. This kind of came to me yesterday. Your quit list is all the stuff that doesn't feed you. All the stuff that sucks you dry in life. What do you need to quit? Anything that doesn't feed you, anything that is not life-affirming, just list it out. It might be relationships, it might be a job, it might be blah, blah, blah. Now, I'm not telling you to go out and quit your job today, but you can put that on your quit list, get deliberate about it, and allow that deliberateness to inspire you to right action to create a new job, and then you get to quit it. Don't do it like I did and wait till, the universe hears your prayers for release and lays you off and then you don't have any money. Don't do it that way. I guess you can, if that's the way you're supposed to. Because it's all perfect, right? It's all the gift. So as you ask yourself, what kind of a life could I create if I gave myself a sense of release from the life I'm in? And perhaps this quit list, all the things that are not life-affirming, all the things that don't feed you in your life, let them go. And don't do it all in one day. Don't even do it all in maybe 1 year. Do you see, it was somewhere around 1991, 92 that I had this moment in the restaurant. And it was 2008 before I was a fully licensed minister. It was a process, yes? But it was a process I allowed. It was a process I said yes to. It was a process I allowed the presence to guide me into more and more fully as I learned and grew. So, are you worthy? Are you worthy of a greater experience of life? Am I worthy to be a minister, to be a practitioner of truth, to be that which God would have me be? Are you worthy to be whatever it might be for you? For me, it's ministry, but for you, it's something else, probably. Although, I don't know, there could be some folks in here to come and see me, I don't know. But whatever it is for you, to ask yourself, do I know that I am worthy? Worthy of love, worthy of grace, worthy of purpose? Do I know that because I am created in the image and likeness of the divine, I am perfect, whole, complete right now? There is nothing I must do. And so let's turn within and seal this message, seal this awakening, this opening, by doing a little bit of digging deep, by getting deliberate. So please breathe with me as you surrender completely and fully and wholly to this moment in time, bringing your attention to your heart. bringing your attention to this breath. And now to this breath. And simply allow yourself to anchor in love. Anchor in the awareness that the infinite mind is thinking you now, is breathing you now, is living you now. You are created in the image and likeness of the infinite one, the living one. We call it God, God the good. And this God is right where you are. And so in this awareness, just bring to mind right now a challenge, an opportunity that you have for digging deep. A place in your life that you could be more deliberate. A place in your life that might benefit from the power of prayer, the power of intention, the power of meditation, the power of awareness. And now just breathe in and get deliberate. And allow yourself to know that any time this issue or this thing is triggering your sense of unworthiness, you lift yourself into this new conscious awareness. I am worthy. I am worthy of all that God would have me be. Breathing again. I am worthy. I am worthy of all that God would have me be. And simply allow yourself to be inspired by this spiritual truth. And rather than working it, allow it to work. And know that out of this moment of deliberate awareness and inspiration comes divine action, that you are guided as you leave this place today, that you are guided to exactly the right steps that open a sense of newness and possibility in your life. The life you were created to have is simply unfolding around you. For you have said yes to worthiness, you have said yes to a bigger idea, you have said yes to God. And so I close this message with a grateful heart, confident that we have been transformed by the renewing of our minds and hearts this day, confident that the power and the grace and the love of God is guiding us in every step. I call it good and very good, and so it is. Amen.